Hi, I'm a Cliff Richard fan, and I'm on YouTube at the moment. I just typed in Cliff Richard in the search engine, and the first video that comes up is this one. So if you're looking for his music on YouTube, which is quite reasonable because he's a musician after all, this is going to come up. So you're going to be looking at this whether you want to or not. And you might click on it to find out what it's about, because Cliff's been in the news lately, and you might think you'll get some sort of facts or information from it. Well, I couldn't find any many facts in it. There are a couple in it, but as a fan of 40 years, I'm going to take you through it and give you facts as I know them, because I probably know Cliff Richard better than the people who made the video. Okay, so we go through the title first. Cliff Richard paedophile. Just by saying that, putting a question mark in your mind, and they're putting a question mark here to escape legal action. They're not saying he is a paedophile, and they're not saying he isn't. But you watch the video, look at all these nasty people: Tony Blair, MI5, Jill Dando, or not Jill Dando, but Ronnie, Kray, Katy Perry. That's probably the most factual thing in it, actually. But yeah, I mean, you've come to the end of the video and you either think, oh, he's either a pedo or he's a nasty bit of work. Okay, but I think it's whoever's putting these videos together are the nasty bits of work, because it really is a bit of work. The facts and the allegations, right. I'm just going to talk you through it, so if I make any mistakes I'll apologise and I'll say. Right, Lord Boothby's Rent Boy. I've never heard of Lord Boothby. I've read numerous books on Cliff over the years. I've seen magazine articles, newspaper articles, radio interviews, documentaries. Lord Boothby doesn't play any part in this story, so where they've got this Rent Boy question mark, I don't know. Oh, he's now Lord Boothby is now Lord Boothby. So are they two people or are they one? One and the same. He liked Cliff Richard. I don't know about that. He also liked the Krays. I don't know about that either. Perhaps he did, perhaps he didn't. I don't know, Lord Boothby. Cliff Richard liked the Krays too. Not sure about that. The Krays, Ronnie Kray certainly liked Cliff Richard. Oh, here we are. Cliff pictured with Lord Boothby, or Boothby, or whatever it is. I've never heard of him, so what probably happened was that he met him once, he's been photographed with him, and because he's been photographed with him, they're trying to taint him by association. So, oh look, those two are together, they must be in it together, be part of the same club. I mean, if you met Cliff and you put his picture on Facebook, that doesn't mean you know him, does it? That doesn't mean you're in with him, you're in the same sort of social group or anything. It just means you met him and you had your picture taken with him. Right, okay. Right, Cliff may have been sexually involved with Ronnie Kray. Where is the evidence for that? There's none. If this is evidence, all this is evidence of is of Cliff writing to Ronnie Kray. It could be Ronnie Kray wrote to Cliff and Cliff wrote to Ronnie Kray. Are they saying that Cliff would have written a love letter to Ronnie Kray in prison? No. Let's have a look, see what's on for her. Oh, here we are, here's the letter. Right, I'm going to zoom in on this one. Let's see what. See, I read it out as Ronnie. Here we are. Dear John, I hope you are well and finding things interesting. John, I had a very nice letter from Cliff Richard. I thought it was marvellous of him to write to me at a time like this. He must be a wonderful person to go to the trouble at a time like this. There are still a lot of nice people left around. Okay. Ronnie's just pleased to have a letter from Cliff, and he's writing to his friend here to say what a nice guy Cliff is. That's all this is about. Let's zoom in here as to how well we knew him. He says, He must be a wonderful person. He must be implies that he didn't know him so well. So if he's intimate with him or he knew him really well, wouldn't he say he is a wonderful person? He must be implies that he didn't know him so well. But one thing he did know, there are still some nice people left in the world, and Cliff is a nice guy. So, and he's a nice guy for writing this letter, but now it's been twisted into something not very nice. Okay, let's pause this here. They're trying to establish a link with Cliff and the Krays here. Again, if you look in the books about Cliff, you won't find the Krays mentioned. It's only on the conspiracy blogs and things like that where you see Cliff linked with the Krays. But I mean, I've got this book here by Steve Turner. This is the best researched book that there's ever been on Cliff. Krays aren't mentioned. You look in the back, and nor is Lord Boothby. And this is the best researched book on Cliff that there's ever been. So where do they get these things from? And well, let's go through this. The Krays owned a lot of land in Suffolk. One weekend in the late 50s, two young singers stayed at their property in Suffolk. One of them ended up in pieces in a suitcase. His name was Bernard Oliver. The other went on to become a well-known Christian singer. Right, okay. First thing here, Bernard Oliver was murdered in 1967, I think it was. Cliff Richard was, the police investigated, Cliff Richard was not there. They reopened the case in the 70s, and two doctors were suspects. I think one of them left the country in the 60s, and one was the main suspect, but the Krays weren't the suspects in this. And Cliff Richard in the investigations wasn't mentioned. He wasn't there. So where this came from, I don't know. It is fabrication. Okay. He was good friends with Jimmy Savile. Well, again, if you look in Cliff Richard books, Jimmy Savile doesn't get a mention. Cliff, the only DJs Cliff is good friends with, that I know of anyway, that everyone knows of, Mike Reed and Gloria Hunniford. Of course, there's several BBC, Radio 2 DJs that he's friendly with, like Wogan and Steve Wright, but they're not good friends. They're just friendly. And it's the same with Jimmy Savile. Cliff was friendly with Jimmy Savile. He wasn't a good friend. Okay, that's a fact. Right, by showing pictures of Cliff with Jimmy Savile, they're trying to taint him by association. If you look in here, they're just posing for the camera, aren't they? Rather formal handshake. And Jimmy Savile's been pictured with everyone anyway, in pop and rock. He's been pictured with the Beatles. If you look on the internet, there's loads of pictures with Jimmy and the Beatles. Doesn't mean anything, does it? Pictures of Jimmy with Elvis Presley. There's one good picture where Elvis is pulling Jimmy's hair, giving it a good old tug. I mean, he's been pictured with everyone in rock and pop. He's a DJ and TV producer. Cliff's met him several times over the years, including Jim Will Fix It. It's a professional thing, and they met at various events. But there was no friendship there. They're not close. They were never close. That's probably the same event there. Here we are. This is the point I'm making. They thought, when they made this video, they thought it was a picture of Cliff Richard. It's not Cliff Richard, it's Davy Jones of the Monkees. So if you follow the logic through with the Lord Boothby pics and the pictures of Cliff with Jimmy Savile, then Davy Jones has now been tainted by association. So is he a pedo because he knows Jimmy Savile? Of course he isn't. The photos at the train station 1970. In 1970, a packet was discovered at a London train station during a search for suspect devices, etc. The packet contained photographs of a famous Christian. I notice how they keep emphasising Christian. Perhaps it's a Christian phobe or something like that. CLIFFOPHOBE and a Christian phobe. A Christian pop singer dressed in women's clothing at a very kinky sex party. The packet was taken away by MI5 and destroyed / buried. How do they know this? If the MI5, do they have intelligence on the MI5? I don't know. I mean, this is in quotes, so they don't say where it's come from. But this is just someone's word that these pictures existed in the first place. And why would MI5 destroy them? Because Clifford was just a pop singer. If it had been, say, Mick Jagger, would they have been destroyed? Mick Jagger was more of an establishment figure than Cliff Richard. And if it had been him at a kinky sex party, dressed up like that, it wouldn't have been a big issue, would it? I don't know. I don't think so. So why would, I mean, why would MI5 destroy it? Cliff was just a pop singer. He hadn't been knighted then. And there's no evidence that these photos existed, and it's just someone's word for it. Yeah, on guest house list again. This is just you're going by people's word here. Since this list came out, it's gone viral, and people have been spreading this video on Twitter, and the list on these blogs, conspiracy blogs and exposure blogs, where you get all the information. The person who came up with this list, Chris Fay, if you look on the video on YouTube, I think it's on Pie Mash Films. There's some good ones on there, but there's also some misleading things. And Chris Fay mentions Cliff Richard, but then afterwards he said there's no evidence he's linked with child abuse or paedophile rings, so there's no evidence of that. So all this list, whatever you're saying here, the guy come out with it, he says there's no evidence that Cliff Richard was involved with it, and the other people he mentioned, the politicians, he doesn't make that disclaimer. So arrest by Sutton police for interfering with boys 1983. Don't you think that would have made the papers? In 1983, Cliff Richard was arrested by Sutton police for interfering with boys. MI5 again, how do they know? Advised the police to drop the case. Okay, why would MI5 do that? Like I said, Cliff Richard wasn't a knight, not even in 1983. He was just a pop star. And this is pure fabrication. I've tried to look for where this came from on the internet, and all I can find is, the nearest thing I can find is a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of someone's cousin. One of their friends said